Ever feel like your day is a soundtrack? Here on the All Sorts podcast, we dive deep into the fascinating scores playing out all around us. Think of our past explorations on YouTube as, well, a curated album of human curiosity. Everything from the secrets of the cosmos to the latest food revolutions.
A great collection.
And for those little earworms of insight in between, you can find us on X, Instagram, and Threads. If you like what you hear, lend us your applause. A like, share, and subscribe really helps us keep this symphony of knowledge going.
And speaking of soundtracks, today we're tuning our ears to a particularly complex and often overlooked one, the urban soundscape.
Exactly. Forget just thinking about, the blare of traffic or construction clatter.
Yeah, the usual suspects.
Right. We're diving into the entire acoustic environment of our cities, that intricate mix of sounds, both harsh and harmonious, that constantly surrounds us.
It really is everywhere.
And for this deep dive, we've gathered some fascinating insights for you. We'll be exploring research from the bustling streets of Seoul, key discussions from a conference in Stockholm, Melodious City, fittingly.
Yeah. A real-world makeover in Antwerp, some intriguing findings from a study in Porto, and some, fundamental ideas about what makes up a soundscape in the first place.
So our mission today is really to open your ears, maybe in a new way, to this world. We want to move beyond simply dismissing urban sounds as, irritating noise.
Right.
Instead, we aim to understand the rich tapestry, the complexity of the urban soundscape, and how it truly affects our lives.
Okay, so let's get down to the nitty-gritty. What exactly is a soundscape? Our research out of Seoul gives us a really clear starting point. They define it as the acoustic environment, as it's perceived by us humans, and crucially, within a specific context.
That perception part is key.
Totally. So the key shift here is thinking about sound from the listener's perspective, not just the decibel level. It's a move away from old school noise control towards a much broader, more human-centered approach. And what's fascinating there is that emphasis on our individual experience. The Seoul study really underscores how important it is to consider people's unique perceptions, their personal histories, their current needs, even what they expect to hear when we're analyzing an acoustic environment.
Yeah, expectations matter a lot.
Absolutely. It's not just about how loud something is, measured in decibels, that unit for sound intensity. It's about how those sounds make us feel, what they mean to us.
Right, and the Seoul research even breaks down the whole idea of soundscape design into 3 practical steps. Seems logical.
It does.
First, you have to really listen and understand the existing soundscape.
Yeah.
What are the dominant sounds? Who is experiencing them? What's the overall acoustic character?
Get the lay of the land, acoustically speaking.
Exactly. Second, you start brainstorming and then evaluating potential design changes. And finally, you get to actually put those changes into action and, importantly, manage the soundscape over time.
It's an ongoing process. Now, if we connect this to some of the foundational thinking in this field, consider the work of R. Murray Schafer, a real pioneer.
Yes?
He introduced this concept of the acoustic field. Now, think about how we usually see the world as a landscape, a framed view, right?
Yeah.
But an acoustic field, according to Schafer, is much more open, expansive, and without clear boundaries. It's the total sonic environment, and interestingly, someone doesn't even have to be there to perceive it for it to exist.
Wait, that's kind of a mind-blowing idea, isn't it? Like the sound is just there, vibrating through the air, whether we're around to hear it or not.
Precisely. It's an objective phenomenon in his view. And then Schafer also talks about acoustic space.
Okay.
This is even more intriguing because it's actually shaped by the sound itself. It doesn't have fixed walls like a room. Instead, it's like the invisible bubble of sound expanding from a source.
So a loud truck has a big bubble, a whisper, a tiny one.
Exactly. It's the reach and texture of that sonic energy.
That raises questions about scale then.
Definitely. Think about the roar of traffic on a busy highway. The acoustic space it creates can be enormous, stretching for miles, but then contrast that with, say, the delicate sound of a bird singing in a quiet forest.
Much smaller space.
Yeah, the acoustic space there might be much smaller, more contained. It really depends on the sound intensity and how it travels through the environment.
Now, this isn't just about a quest for absolute silence in our cities, is it?
Not at all. And the notes from the Stockholm conference highlighted a fascinating example from Barcelona's Plaça de Catalunya.
Oh, yeah.
It was described as a noisy place. Lots of people talking, pigeons cooing, water fountains splashing.
Sounds like chaos.
Well, yes. But it was also described as full of energy and life. All those sounds combined, apparently, to create a positive and vibrant experience for the people there.
So noise isn't always bad.
It seems not. What's really key there is how context shapes our perception. That same lively mix of sounds in Barcelona might feel chaotic and disruptive if you were trying to concentrate in a library, for example.
Good point.
The Stockholm discussions also brought up examples of soundscapes generally considered high quality. The Helsinki waterfront with the gentle lapping of waves, the cries of seagulls, the distant hum of a fishing boat.
Sounds lovely.
Or the bustling atmosphere inside the Budapest indoor market with all the voices and trolley sounds.
More lively.
Exactly. Even a small, carefully designed garden in Manhattan centered around the soothing sound of a water feature. It's interesting that these positive soundscapes can pop up in all sorts of places, urban and rural.
So it's becoming clear that it's not just about the sounds themselves, but also how we experience them and, well, what we tend to prefer. Research, like the work by Zhang and Kang mentioned in the Stockholm summary, consistently points to our preference for natural sounds. You know, the flow of water, birds singing, wind in the trees.
Classics.
Right. And the sounds of human connection voices, laughter over those mechanical, often jarring sounds of traffic and machinery.
But, and this is important, that crucial element of context keeps popping up. While most of us would probably choose birdsong over the rumble of a garbage truck,
Obviously.
the sound of a distant ambulance siren might actually be reassuring if you're waiting for help. So our preferences aren't set in stone. They're heavily influenced by the situation we're in.
And the study out of Porto really brought this point home, especially in those relaxing environments like urban parks.
What did they find?
They discovered that while people definitely notice the various sounds around them, the rustling leaves, other park visitors, the majority, often perceive the environment as being quiet and, crucially, weren't actually bothered by the sounds they heard.
Interesting. So they heard it, but it didn't register as annoying.
Exactly. And there was a similar finding in a study of the Botanical Garden of Curitiba in Brazil, apparently.
This really highlights that there's a significant difference between simply registering a sound and actually being annoyed by it. The Porto study concluded that by carefully studying soundscapes in different urban settings, we can gain really valuable insights into how people react to urban noise during various activities and at different levels of exposure.
The Soul research also delved into how our other senses can play a role in how we perceive soundscapes. Which makes sense, right? We don't just hear things in isolation.
Absolutely not. They found that things like the visual appeal of a place, how comfortable it feels acoustically, and even how much natural light there is can all influence our overall impression.
So a nice view might make the traffic seem less bad.
Potentially, yeah. Or good acoustics might make a visually plain space feel better. And what's really interesting is that which of these factors is most important can actually vary quite a bit depending on who you ask. Different groups prioritize different things. This reinforces the idea that if we want to design effective urban soundscapes, we need to take a really holistic approach, considering a range of factors that go beyond just the sounds themselves. It's about crafting a multisensory experience.
This brings us nicely to the idea of actively designing the soundscape, which was a major theme at the Stockholm conference.
Yeah, moving from just controlling noise to shaping the whole acoustic environment.
It's clear that this needs to become a more central part of how we plan our cities, and that practical research, done in collaboration with the people who live and work in these areas, the local communities, is absolutely vital.
Definitely that local input. The Architecture for the Senses exhibition in Stockholm really drove this point home, aiming to challenge the, long-standing dominance of visual considerations in urban planning.
Sight over sound, basically.
Pretty much. It really pushed for thinking about sound and light as equally important elements in shaping our experience of urban life.
And they didn't just talk about it in abstract terms. They showcased real-world examples. The renovation of Mariatorget in Stockholm is a fascinating story.
Oh, the sound installation.
That's the one. Architect Bjorn Hellstrom actually created a permanent sound installation within the park, and apparently it sparked a huge amount of discussion.
Which is often a good sign.
Right, even before it was finished, which, as they pointed out, often happens with truly innovative projects. It really made people think deeply about the role of sound in our well-being and in the built environment.
And the Stockholm Virtual Soundscape Tour, that's another really clever initiative, isn't it? Using technology to explore people's attitudes towards what they considered good and bad sounds in the city.
Yeah, getting that subjective data.
It's all about gathering that crucial information about individual and collective perceptions that we talked about earlier.
Professor Hellstrom made a really insightful observation, too, about the need for an iterative process in soundscape planning, much like how architectural design evolves.
Learning from each project.
Exactly. A successful project can serve as inspiration and a learning opportunity for the next, gradually building a body of knowledge and best practices.
And the conference summary actually outlined a proposed two-stage planning method for integrating acoustic design right from the get-go, the initial stages of urban development.
Okay, how does that work?
Well, the first stage focuses on providing broad advice about where to place buildings, roads, and green spaces to meet basic acoustic goals, while also balancing, economic, aesthetic, safety, and transportation needs.
The big picture stuff.
Right. And for parks and public squares, the aim isn't necessarily to achieve total silence.
Which is probably unrealistic anyway.
Often, yes. But rather to create the potential for positive soundscape design by avoiding the introduction of particularly disruptive sounds, keeping options open, essentially.
Then, in the second stage, you bring in the acoustic specialists.
Precisely. To provide more detailed recommendations on specific designs and the materials that should be used. It's about weaving acoustic considerations into the fabric of the overall planning process, not just tacking it on at the end.
Makes sense. The case study in Antwerp, where they redeveloped a former gasworks site into a residential area with green space, gives us a tangible example of these principles at work.
Yeah, that's a good one. They had several existing constraints, like the beautiful Art Nouveau architecture they wanted to preserve.
Can't just knock that down.
No way. And the desire to keep mature trees and an old shed on the site, integrating the old with the new.
And importantly, they conducted in-depth interviews with the people who already lived nearby.
Crucial step. To really understand their feelings about the existing environment, how they used the green spaces, and what noise sources they found significant. This community feedback was essential in guiding the design.
So what kind of advice came out of that?
Well, based on all that information, they offered specific advice on how to arrange the new buildings, like using a row of buildings to act as a natural barrier to block noise.
Clever.
Ensuring high-quality insulation for building facades that would be exposed to noise, and even thinking about interior layouts to minimize sound intrusion within the homes. It was a really comprehensive approach.
Now, sometimes just reducing unwanted sounds isn't enough. You might want to actively shape the acoustic environment.
Right. Add something positive.
That's where the concept of artificial soundscapes comes into play. The Sonic Garden project in Florence is a really interesting example of this.
Artificial soundscapes. Sounds a bit sci-fi.
Maybe a little. But it involves using carefully generated sounds to actually mask unpleasant noise
Right.
and improve the acoustic quality of a space.
How does that work technically?
The technology behind it is quite clever. Microphones pick up the existing noise, then there's a sound card and specialized software that draws from a library of carefully designed sound compositions.
Like nature sounds or music?
Could be various things designed for the purpose. Then amplifiers and loudspeakers that are designed to blend seamlessly into the environment. Maybe look like rocks or plants.
Discreet.
Yeah. And the goal isn't to just drown out the bad noise with louder noise. The software actually adds a small amount of energy in a way that reduces how annoying the original noise is perceived.
So it changes the quality, not just the volume.
Exactly. And it seems to be effective. Surveys with people who use the Sonic Garden show that they found the environment more pleasant and acoustically comfortable.
Good results.
Interestingly, they discovered that standard measurements of sound pressure levels, decibels, weren't as helpful in evaluating these artificial soundscapes. Other measures, like something called slope, gave a better indication of how people were actually experiencing the sound.
So the usual metrics don't always capture the subjective experience.
Seems that way. We've also seen some incredibly creative urban designs that use natural elements to craft unique soundscapes. The sea organ in Zadar, Croatia, is a stunning example.
Oh, I've heard of that. It uses the waves, right?
Yeah. It's an architectural installation built right into the coastline that uses the power of sea waves pushing air through pipes to create these fascinating, almost musical sounds. It's become a real destination for relaxation and contemplation.
Wow, that's amazing.
It's a fantastic example of how different fields can come together. It involved an architect, an expert in acoustics and music composition, a hydraulic specialist, and an organ builder.
A real team effort.
And they even carefully tuned the pipes to reflect the local musical traditions. It really shows how sound can be a fundamental part of urban design, creating a distinct atmosphere and sense of place.
Moving beyond these more artistic installations, the Florida Community Design Center has been doing some really practical work on planning for the soundscape of transportation.
Okay, what's their approach?
Their goal is to strategically manage sounds in urban development projects, sometimes by creating buffers, sometimes by highlighting existing sounds, sometimes by eliminating unwanted noise, and sometimes even by introducing specific sounds to enhance the environment. Very targeted.
Their Urban Village Master Plan near the University of Florida is a great illustration of this. They use soundscape analysis as a key tool, alongside looking at, water flow and transportation patterns.
Integrating different layers of planning.
Exactly. To inform their design recommendations for this high-density area that also included green spaces. They even aligned quiet zones with natural methods of cleaning stormwater, suggesting the creation of water gardens that would naturally contribute to a more peaceful sound environment.
That's smart, combining ecological function with acoustic benefit.
Yeah. And they're designing the Waldo Road Corridor project in Gainesville, focused on putting these ideas into action along a major road, using principles of water management and transit planning to create recreational areas, small parks, and buffer zones that also take the acoustic environment into account.
It really emphasizes the point that when we're thinking about soundscape design, it's often best to first focus on reducing the negatives, those unwanted and disruptive sounds.
Clean up first.
Right, before we start trying to enhance the positives. And the ongoing shift towards electric vehicles presents a huge opportunity here, doesn't it, to make our urban soundscapes much better.
Definitely quieter, potentially.
Potentially, although, as was pointed out, we need to be mindful that we don't just replace one type of noise with another, creating, a street full of ringtones or other artificial sounds without assessing the overall mix.
Good caution. Need a thoughtful approach.
That proactive approach to managing the soundscape is so important. The concept of quiet urban areas is another key strategy for local noise policies and how we plan our cities.
Like designated quiet zones.
Exactly, providing much-needed havens from high levels of noise. Some cities even have specific acoustic standards they use to define these quiet areas, like keeping average noise levels below 40 decibels, for instance.
Now, all this talk about making things quieter naturally leads to the question: what are the real-world benefits of reducing noise? Is there an economic case?
Well, a fascinating cost-benefit analysis conducted in Israel looked precisely at that. The impact of stricter programs aimed at reducing noise from traffic roads.
And how do they measure the benefit?
They used a method called hedonic prices, which essentially looks at how much people are willing to pay for a property based on environmental factors like noise. Trying to put a value on quietness, basically, in both cities and rural areas. And their findings were quite compelling. They discovered that the benefits of reducing noise have actually increased significantly over the last decade or so.
Really? How much?
For example, they found that a reduction of just 1 decibel in noise levels was associated with an average increase of 1.4% in urban property values.
Wow, 1.4% per decibel. That's actually pretty substantial.
It is. It suggests a real economic driver for noise reduction. But as with most things, deciding whether or not to implement noise reduction measures isn't a simple yes or no.
It depends, right?
Exactly. The Israeli study found that it really depends on the specific location and the type of road. They analyzed the costs associated with different road types and building arrangements, things like how many floors a building has, how far it is from the road, traffic flow, what kind of soundproofing or treatment is used.
Lots of variables.
Tons. And one of their key conclusions was that if you're using standard methods of noise reduction, like noise barriers or maybe quieter road surfaces.
The usual stuff.
Yeah, the regular acoustic means, as they put it, then the ideal noise level to aim for is actually lower, around 64 decibels, maybe even 59 decibels.
Okay.
However, if you're considering more expensive solutions, like actually covering over roads, which is a massive undertaking.
Very expensive.
Right. Then the optimal level might be slightly higher, maybe around 67 decibels, because the cost goes up so much.
So there's a balance point between cost and benefit.
Precisely. Ultimately, they concluded that the economic benefits of reducing noise need to be carefully weighed against the costs of achieving a particular noise standard, and this calculation needs to take into account factors like how densely populated an area is. It's a complex equation with different answers depending on the specific situation.
Makes sense. It's not just about the noise, but the context and the cost.
Always. Now, it's important to remember that while our main focus today has been on the soundscape, the Stockholm Conference also briefly touched upon the role of our other senses.
Ah, right. You mentioned that.
Yeah, particularly our sense of smell in shaping our experience of the urban environment. It's another really powerful element that contributes to our overall sense of place and identity.
Absolutely. The smell of rain on hot pavement or a bakery.
Exactly. Urban planners and designers can actually influence the smell environment through their choices, like what kinds of plants they use or whether they incorporate water features.
And we encounter a huge range of smells in our cities, don't we? From vehicle exhaust and industrial odors
Less pleasant ones.
to the delicious aromas wafting from restaurants and cafes.
And interestingly, our individual preferences for smells can vary quite a bit, just like with sound, and even our physical state at a particular time can influence what we find appealing or unpleasant.
Like being hungry makes food smells better.
Probably. But what's really significant is the strong connection they found between the overall smell of a place and how we perceive that place as a whole, with each influencing the other.
So the smell affects the perception, and the perception affects how we feel about the smell.
Kind of, yeah. That example of the smell of a fish market actually enhancing the overall experience for many people is a great illustration of this interplay. It adds character, authenticity.
Huh. Fascinating how interconnected it all is.
It really is.
So as we bring this deep dive to a close, it's clear that the urban soundscape is far more than just unwanted noise. It's a rich and intricate layer of our urban experience that profoundly shapes how we feel and interact with our cities.
Definitely not just background static. We really encourage you, our listeners, to become more aware of the sounds that surround you in your daily life. Take a moment, maybe next time you're out, to just listen. Consider how these sounds make you feel and how they contribute to your overall experience of the urban spaces you inhabit.
Yeah, be an active listener in your own environment. And that leads us to a final thought for you to consider. How could intentionally designing the soundscapes of our cities, thoughtfully considering both the sounds we enjoy and those that can be disruptive, contribute to creating cities that are not only more sustainable, but also healthier and more enjoyable places to live?
Big question.
And what crucial role do our individual perceptions and our cultural backgrounds play in defining what makes a good urban soundscape? It's a fascinating question to ponder, isn't it?
It certainly is. And if you've found this exploration into the urban soundscape as engaging as we have, we really invite you to continue your journey of discovery with the All Sorts podcast.
Please do.
Our extensive archive on YouTube is brimming with fascinating deep dives into a universe of topics, from the smallest particles to the grandest galaxies. We cover all sorts.
That's right. So lend your ears, and if you like what you hear, please do like, share, and subscribe to the All Sorts podcast on YouTube. It really helps us out. And for more thought-provoking snippets and engaging discussions, be sure to follow us on X, Instagram, and Threads. There's a whole world of captivating ideas waiting for you, all sorts of knowledge, all in one place, ready for your exploration.